CEO and co-founder of YouLi, which is the best platform for organizing group trips. And today we are talking about Tour Series, which is a new feature that allows you to manage multiple departure dates for your tours. And I'm joined today by some really amazing clients who are taking advantage of this brand new feature. And we have Nate from Adventure Out Loud. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Nate from Adventure Out Loud. Adventure Out Loud is an African travel specialist who donate 50% of our profits to keep disadvantaged children in school. So we do everything from Egypt all the way down to Cape Town, and predominantly around East Africa. So Kilimanjaro, safari, gorillas, chimps, that kind of stuff. So looking forward to getting back to Africa in a couple of months.
All right, cool.
Yay! Borders are open. And we're also joined by Kim from Pristine Trails. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Kim from Pristine Trails. My husband and I own the company. We also focus on African travel, primarily Tanzania, as well as a little bit more broadly in East Africa with gorilla trekking and a little bit in Kenya here and there. So in Tanzania, we focus on Kilimanjaro trek, safari, beach vacation, and all, kind of other things in that area.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. They are going to be walking us through their particular implementations of what we call Tour Series. So just to introduce that concept a little bit more. So for those of you who know what the YouLi platform is, you know that it's a great place to create trips and to organize the group travel management challenges that come with group tours. And as we have worked with more and more amazing companies like Adventure Out Loud and Pristine Trails that are scaling up, and they actually run multiple departures for the same tour. So sometimes people call it the same itinerary. Basically, let's say a Kilimanjaro trek, right? So if you're doing the Lemosho route, it's effectively the same tour each time you go, just has a different departure date. So, we recognize that there was a challenge within the YouLi platform that at the moment you actually have to, or so previously to having the feature of Tour Series, you would actually have to show that as, I'm just going to show you a quick example of individual trips. And so this is an example from Global Family Travels. So they launched the Street Hughes tours during the pandemic, so over the last couple of years, and they have each of the departure dates as a separate trip, right? And so this is how we did this before we had Tour Series. But then we realized, well, we need to be able to group these together. And so now, and Nate's going to go into this in more depth, now you can actually have a single card with actually each of your departure dates shown in the one drop-down box, so that you can see here, okay, if I want to do the 8-day Lemosho trek, I can depart any of these dates. And then once I pick it, and then I click Enquire Now, it takes me to the right trip page. So on the back end in YouLi, it's still a separate trip, but the great thing for your travelers is that it shows them as one kind of consolidated card, so they don't have to sort of scan through a whole long list of them. They can pick which tour they want to go on and then pick the date that they want to depart. And in fact, you can also do that next level thing of, if you offer a private version of that, you can include that in your tour series as well. And then it tells the person that not only can they go on these group departures, but they can also choose to contact and inquire about a private trip. And so these would be trips that can be in, they can either be in brochure mode, or you can actually take payments on them, but people can express interest in that, and then you can process that as a private request. So that's kind of the high level idea of the Tour Series feature. And just to quickly show kind of what that looks like on the back end. So as a planner, you're going to have this new option here called Tour Series when you're editing your trip. So update trip overview, and you're going to see the Tour Series that you have installed. So at the moment we're rolling this out, so you do just need to open a support request to get that installed and set up. But once you get going, Nate and Kim will show you how easy it is to kind of work with the Tour Series once they're installed. So you basically assign it per trip, and then from the shared trip and integrate with website tab, you can preview what that's going to look like. There is a little bit of a bug here with the preview. Just note that when it does actually embed onto your website, it will take on the styling of your site. So don't worry if that's looking a little bit weird in the preview here. Just make sure to test it on your actual integration. So that's a really quick version of kind of what Tour Series is as a feature. And so now let's jump into the fun part of how you actually use it. And I'm sure more and more questions will come up from that. So Kim has graciously volunteered to be the first one to kind of share her experience with this. And so she's just going to share her screen and talk us through how she uses Tour Series.
Thanks, Jen. So yeah, I'll just give you a brief overview of why we were super interested in this. I feel like we started talking about this probably a year ago, if not a little more. So we, much like Nate, offer group departures for Kilimanjaro trekking. So in terms of our overall trip, our safaris are all kind of custom, tailor-made experiences for individual travelers. So we're not quite able to embed like trip cards onto our website for safaris, but for Kilimanjaro, we offer group departure dates almost every single week throughout the year, except for during the rainy season. So we were really looking for a way to get those on our website and wanted to use the feature from YouLi to integrate those trip cards into our website directly so that people could see the dates more easily, see the itinerary, really read all of the details, and could then just sign up right there and then instead of having to email and have me email them a link, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been working on this for the past several weeks. I haven't integrated it on our website yet, but I wanted to be able to show actually what our website looks like now. So kind of what we're going from to what we'll be going to. So I'll share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. So this is right now our Kilimanjaro group trek page. So it's just a little bit at the top. Right here, there's just a little table of the prices for the 4 different routes we offer as group departures. And then we have these 2 drop down for each year, which if you click on it, you'll see all of the group departure dates available for 2022, and then it's the same for 2023. So it's this very, very long list that, you know, is nice and organized and clean, but, you know, someone still has to email us and ask us to, you know, to actually see the itinerary, whatever, for that trip. So what we're now able to do with Tour Series is here I just have what the trip cards will look like. So I'm done with the Machame route trek. And as Jen said, the itinerary is the same for every Machame route group trek. It's just that the dates vary. So this way now you can see, you know, I put a picture here. I don't know what this will look a little bit different once it's on our website. As Jen said, it'll kind of look a little more integrated with our fonts and all of that. But you can see right here now, you'll see all of these dates drop down for what's available from, you know, today up until the end of 2023. So if someone clicks into this, they'll go right to the trip card. They can see the itinerary and all of the details about the trip. They can book directly, they can inquire, etc. So a lot of the questions that I get over email right now can actually be answered directly by people just going here right straight from our trip page. One of the things we're talking about, and Jen might mention this in a little while, is how to kind of add a feature, integrate a couple YouLi features that already exist to be able to filter these dates a bit. So, you know, if I'm a traveler, I might know, like, I only want to travel this year. I know I want to travel in 2022. So instead of them seeing all the dates here that include 2023, there might be a way to filter, or I know there is a way to integrate with something called tags, so that only the 2022 dates will pop up. Another one is, you know, people often look for Kilimanjaro treks that have you summiting during the full moon. So for us to be able to have a traveler filter, I just want to see full moon treks, then, you know, the couple of full moon treks on the Machame route or on the Lemosho route, on the Northern Circuit route will pop up so that they're only seeing those dates and not having to kind of look through, you know, a list of 10, 20, 30 dates. So that's where we are. I'm just finalizing kind of on the back end all of these itineraries for each of the 4 different routes we offer as group treks. And then these trip cards will then be integrated on our site. I'm still playing around a little bit with how we'll do it on this page. If I'll fully replace these lists or if I'll keep these lists, maybe drop further down, but the trip cards, you know, right there at the top, we'll see kind of what it looks like. But Nate already has his fully integrated. So when he shares that with you, you guys can see exactly what that all looks like and how it works.
Amazing. Yeah, really excited to see that together, especially with so many departures. I can see why this has taken you a couple of weeks to get set up. But
Kim,
yeah,
just before you close,
oh yeah,
if I can interrupt for 1 second, do you want to just share your screen again and just go to the Lemosho where you've got the big drop down? I just thought I'd bring this up because it's something Jen and I have been discussing. Oh, sorry, Machame, I think was the one that had the bigger one. Yeah. Something Jen and I have been discussing that I think would be useful getting community input on, I suppose, is see how long that list is. Something like Kilimanjaro, we can run it every day of the year. So what Jen and I were talking about is maybe it would be better having more of a calendar view that you're used to on booking.com or something like that, where you can actually pick the days you want to depart. And then based on the day you pick, YouLi actually creates an itinerary. Because what you've had to do here to create all those itineraries, you've had to go and create 20 itineraries kind of thing, which only takes a few minutes. But if the system could actually generate that for us because they're the same thing every time, I would personally find that super useful because it saves me doing 20 different itineraries. And then you only have one made for the one that people are interested in, rather than having 20 made, but people only buy 2 of them.
Right. Yeah, I think when I go to kind of our dashboard and I see all the trip cards, but you know, they obviously don't all have people booked, and some of them might never have people booked, but they're still sitting there. So maybe that's a little bit of what you're talking about as well. I think, and that's why I'm interested as well in the filtering. So when somebody knows they're only interested in a certain time frame, the 3 tags I've created or filters are the year, full moon, and then I've also created a filter for like each quarter. So if someone knows I want to travel in September, only the dates from July to September will pop up. So I've kind of narrowed it down that way. So if they're able to filter that way, then this list won't be so crazy long. But yeah, I like that. I guess the other thing I would just say for everybody watching is the way that I have created all of these trip pages is just from a template. So the nice thing about YouLi as well is that it has a template feature. So if you create one, base trip with your itinerary and all the details that you want, you can just continue copying that and changing the dates and creating all of these in a very short period of time.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the templates, actually, because that's really important for use with the tour series feature, because once you've made that trip, if you change the original one, it doesn't copy through, right? So you want to perfect your itinerary, get your trip really, really solid, all the tasks, all the pricing packages, everything about it. You want to make sure that that's really solid. Make your template from it, then make all of your departures from it. The good side of this is, of course, if you need to make a change because it's a full moon tour, so you need to modify that particular itinerary for some reason, it won't affect any of the other trips in the tour series. So it is by design that changes made in either place don't affect each other. Like once you've made that new departure, it is a separate trip and they are independent. And that is by design, but it's just something you have to kind of keep in mind and make sure you don't prematurely start creating your departure dates. And I think what Nate was just hinting at is something that we're really interested in, sort of exploring that ability for the traveler to sort of say, I want to depart September 8th. And then depending on the configuration for that tour series, assuming that's allowed, right, it would actually create that itinerary for September 8th. So that way you sort of set a schedule rather than creating a trip for each departure date. So that's part of this exercise. We've launched tour series as a new feature, and we want to kind of see, how you guys are using it and what you would see making more sense. So that's great. And I look forward, please, those of you on Facebook, feel free to leave comments as well, to let us know how you would like to see tour series expand.
Jen, just one thing to clarify for me, when you set up a template and then you use that template to create, say, 5 trips, if you change something on the template, it doesn't change the 5 trips already created, does it?
That's correct.
You've got to go and change it in the template and the 5 trips.
That's correct. And that is by design, just because it would be too dangerous. You could end up, you make a change to a template and it goes and changes trips that, you don't even realize you're changing. And so it's a really dangerous idea to do it. It sounds like a good feature until you actually think through the full implications, which is why we've chosen. Once you make a trip from a template, so here under trips I'm planning under templates, once you create the trip from the template, that trip is its own standalone thing. And while you can group them together in the tour series, they're still independent. So changes that you make to the different trips are absolutely independent. This is similar to like if you're copying a page on a website, you start from a page, you copy it, like they're independent, right? So you start from that base template, but then you are now working on separate pages, right?
And I would
it's a really good one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that the nice thing about that is, although I have been in the situation where I've created a lot of trips and then realized I was making my template, which is really fun. The nice thing is that once we do have people adding on to a group trek, there are often little bits and pieces that change, like someone's arriving an extra day earlier, a day later, they've added a safari. So, once all of those modifications are happening in an individual trip, I can do all that within that trip and it's not affecting anything else about, any of the other trips in that same tour series.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the idea there. So I think the suggestion that Nate is making is really the right answer to this, which is making it so that you don't have to create an empty departure until you have someone interested in it. And I think that would reduce the sort of kind of admin here, because you'd be making less trips, and therefore if you do need to make a change, you have less places to make that change. So
yeah, definitely, because I've found the same as you, Kim. You're like, you find a spelling error or something and then you got to change it in 20 things, which only takes 30 seconds each one, but it's still 30 seconds times 20 trips adds up pretty quick.
Yeah, it's tedious.
Absolutely. Well, and
I think the other thing is that people will probably, or at least for what we do with Kilimanjaro, there's some things we can control and there's some that aren't. So in Tanzania, for example, the government could change its mind tomorrow and decide to put a double trekking fees on Kilimanjaro. So then we'd have to, nothing we could do about it. We'd have to go and change our pricing on 20 different tours. Whereas if you could have it so you just changed it on the template, it'd just be super quick and easy. And obviously you couldn't change, or you may not change it for existing departures that already have people on it, but you would definitely want to change it for ones that don't already have people booked.
Yeah, so that's an interesting idea, like the difference between those that are already have people on it versus those that don't. So yeah. Well,
it sounds crazy, but it's happened before.
Oh no, I know. Park fees just randomly go up and things like that, right? Yeah.
With one day notice.
Oh yeah, and I feel like with the current conditions, like last minute changes are like the new norm for everything, right? So, but the thing I did want to show in addressing Kim's comment about filtering by tags, this is a website from Rare Air Travel, and they do trekking to Bhutan, and I just wanted to show you how they sort of do the filtering by tags here. So it's just a drop down box on the page where the embed is, and then she has the different tags listed here. And so there's only one challenging trek, but there's a number of special interest or medium or easy, and so that's the way you would implement the filtering. You would sort of basically create a sort of drop down box on your website, and then you're going to be using JavaScript to kind of pass that tag in to your embed to do that dynamic filtering. So that's something that you can either have a developer do for you, or we can do that consulting for you as well. And we have a couple of examples like Rare Air Travel, and as well as Eleanor Fish from Run Wild Retreats does something similar. And so just to show you where that's controlled. So these are the tags, right? And so it's very important to understand the difference between tour series, which is basically saying it's the same itinerary usually, or the same tour. And so you would put it in the same tour series. But then as you can see here, he's got two tags, adventure and private. So adventure obviously is just sort of a general tag for these kinds of excursions, but then private indicates that this is the private version of that trip. And so it actually, we actually used this tag already on Nate's site. So upcoming group trips versus private trips. So there's sort of just different tags that are used on those different pages. So you can also do that with tags. You can have dedicated pages that only show trips within a particular tag. And so you don't have to do it dynamically. You can actually just hard code, like on this page, I only show Kilimanjaro. On this page, I only show gorilla tours. On this, so you can do that kind of thing, or you can do the dynamic filtering across an entire set of them on one page. So it just depends on how your website's structured, which style works better. And so the ability to sort of filter by year, like the example that Kim was giving, you'd have to tag the different trips with that tag. So you'd need to put 2022, 2023 as an actual tag. So let me just jump back into here. So you do something like 2022 as a tag, right? So that would be the way that you would implement that kind of filtering that we were sort of talking about, or that Kim was suggesting would be sort of handy as a way to handle, like, there's so many items in that drop down box, so many dates, but if they know they don't want to go until 2023, it'd be great to kind of filter that out.
Jen, would there be a way, just my quick question, and if you want to answer this separately, that's fine, to with multiple tags, like 2022 July to August, like if I had tagged each trip with, like, can you do that? Okay.
Yeah, and it's just that when you do the tag filtering, it does an and. So it's going to be like 2022 and July to August. And it only returns the ones that match both those tags.
Got it.
So we don't, I believe at the moment we don't allow the or, but I'd have to double check on that. So when you're building your filters and doing the logic, just making sure that it's clear to the user that it's this and this if you have two filter boxes. Not this or this kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, and so that is something that is sort of, every customer does things slightly differently, and so that's why we offer our consulting to kind of help people sort of figure out, like, what tags do I need? How do I filter them on my website? All of that stuff. This is definitely sort of next level capabilities, but as you can see, more and more of our clients are adopting this stuff, so it's really great to see it out in the wild. All right, Sam, did you have any questions, or Nancy, did you have any questions for Kim before we move on to Nate's?
I've got just general questions, and I did have to drop off for 2 minutes, so they may have been answered. Let me ask at least just one of them. I know the tour series is set up whereby the only thing that really varies is the date. But what if the price varies, depending on whether it's high season or low season?
Yeah, that's a really
I'll show
good
that
question.
if you want, Jen.
Yeah, great. Thanks,
I'll
Nate.
show you how that
Take it
works
away.
if you want.
Mhm.
So a good example is for our Kilimanjaro treks, the price wouldn't necessarily change, as in your national park fees are still the same. But what does change in peak season is your accommodation. So if I just go into one of our tours. So if you're looking in September, which is normally a peak season, one of the things I've done is, rather than change the price under highlights, they can upgrade their accommodation. So if you look at something like this is an upgrade, and when they select that, depending on the time of year, that price, that $800 will change. So if they're in peak season or season, it might be say 500 or 600. So because you're creating different tours for each departure dates, you can actually change your pricing. And same, I suppose, to answer your question as well, you could actually change the price here as well based on the departure date. Does that make sense, Sam?
Yeah, that certainly does. Thanks.
And I would just add that, like, the nice thing, what you see on Nate's trip page right here, it says from and the price. So if you have different packages or different prices at different times, like on his website, that card will still say from and a certain price. So it won't necessarily quote the exact price it will be for you if you book that trip. But when you go into the trip, whether it's, you know, low season or high season, or if you're double occupancy or single, then you would see maybe some of those distinctions once you get into the trip page itself.
Yeah. And I think that's a really cool thing that you can do with the packages. At least that's how I've set it up. So it'll obviously show the cheapest package first. But for something like Kilimanjaro, because you've got a lot of different, you got me now?
Yep.
So on Kilimanjaro, the price decreases significantly the more people you have in a group, like a lot of tours. So what we've done with packages is we've put pricing in based on the number of people in your group. So exactly what Kim was saying there, people can select the package that's applicable to them.
Yeah, and so you know, Kim's point about it showing the from on the trip card, if you want to just pop back to where they're embedded on your website, we'll just show where that is. Yeah, that one. And so just to make sure, to Sam's question, see where it says from. Ooh, it bounced again.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Let's see how it says from down the bottom here.
Yeah, exactly. And so if then they pick a particular date and click in, it could be different prices within that trip, right? So so once they land on the trip page for that particular departure date, that's when they'll get the exact pricing for that departure date. Now, if it's significantly different, where you think like people are going to be really irritated if they see from 500 and then they get in and it's like 5,000, you know, like in that case, I would argue that they're not really part of the same tour series. And so maybe you should actually have them be grouped separately. So, and also of course the add-ons vary. So like the base price is the base price for the tour, but then, you know, if they add on luxury accommodations or extra days and things like that, their price is obviously going to be higher. So it will definitely depend on the actual traveler's selections as well as the base price that you have on it. But my general guidance would be, don't group things into the same tour series that have significantly different pricing structures, where it's sort of unexpected, I would say. But I think that's part of
what I've thought about is something like, sorry, I think my network dropped out there again. I was saying something you could do is you could have multiple tour series for a similar trip. So safari, for example, accommodation in peak season for safari can be 4 times what it is in low season. So you couldn't have, say, a 5-day Great Migration safari in low season and high season together. But you could have Great Migration peak season as a tour series. You could have safari low season as a tour series, so that people could actually make, or whether they want to buy the cheapest safari.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no limit, you know, within the feature of tour series, there's no limit on the number of tour series you can have. So this is really a decision that you make based on how you want to structure your tours and the way that you want your travelers to consume them. So there's just a setup And there's just the fee to use the feature, but it's a flat fee, an unlimited tour series. All right. Any other questions or things that came up from the discussion here today?
Probably one thing we could chat through. Sorry, you go, Sam.
Oh, okay. Then since you're giving me the opportunity, for you, Nate and Kim, for you guys, whereby you have tours with lots of different dates, is the nature of your business in those tours basically such that if people express demand in any of those dates, you're basically just confident that you'd be able to get availability at the accommodations and whatever you need? Is that essentially how you do it? Or do you, if they express demand, do you then kind of have to hustle and say, hey, we've got demand for these dates, is there availability? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for Kilimanjaro, that's, I think, unique because the accommodations are pretty minimal in terms of like hotels and lodges. So it's just that in our case, and I think Nate's similar, we include in our package a night, and Nate might offer more, but like a night of hotel before and after your trek. But then on the trek itself, it's camping. So the capacity is like our guides, our crews, our equipment, and that kind of stuff. So for us, we cap our groups at 10 people. If we happen, and this has happened before, that we get a lot of demand for a particular date, we will create 2 separate groups. We'll, if we have 15 people, we'll separate them into, 6 and whatever, 7 and 8 or whatever, however it works best. But yeah, so I think your question would be a little more relevant for like a safari where like there is a lot of accommodation and all of these other bookings that need to happen. So we don't have like open group departures for things like that, but I think Nate has some of those. So I don't know how you manage it, Nate.
Yeah, I think it's, we manage it by having a little asterisk that says this accommodation is subject to being available when you book it. So here's your template, but that may not be your final itinerary based on what's available when you book it. So if you book a year in advance, you'll get that accommodation. If you book 2 weeks in advance, you'll get what's available.
Got it. Okay, great.
I think it's also kind of interesting because sorry, I've lost my train of thought there for a second. It'll come back to me after.
Oh, good. Sam, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think it's just my last question, and I think you guys sort of touched on this issue, but basically, as you make all these different dates available, how do you handle it if 1 or 2 people say express interest in a particular date, but you don't, as you get closer to those dates, you don't get like the minimum number of people? Do you then just sort of counsel them out of those dates and try to steer them and aggregate them towards other dates? How do you handle that?
So this is actually something I struggle with a little bit with YouLi. I don't know, maybe Jen has some advice, but typically the way we manage our group treks, and this is how we've always done it, even pre-YouLi, is that that group will depart regardless of the number of people booked on it. Typically in the past, I've only allowed a minimum of 2 people. So like if there's a single traveler and I don't already have people booked on a group date, I won't confirm them on a trip. If they're, if it's a couple or 2 friends at least, then they can book. I don't quite know how to handle that in YouLi, because if I set like the minimum has to be 2, once there are ready 2, then it doesn't have to be 2. But essentially COVID, we've been a little bit lax, and even there've been a couple times we've had a single traveler on a group trek and we've sent it out, just because even there, we don't lose money. We don't really make anything, but it's, our crew gets to go out, and during this time, that's like invaluable. So I don't know how we'll do it going forward, but yeah, the way we run our group trips is that they will go out regardless of the number of people booked.
Sorry, that was actually the train of thought I lost. So thanks for getting me back on track. The way I was going to deal with it was having packages. So obviously if there's only one person, it's more expensive. Whereas if there's multiples, then it gets cheaper. So that would allow us to make at least some kind of money if only one person booked on. So in packages you saw before, I've got one person might be say 4,000, 2 people might drop down to 3,800, 4 people might be 3,500, and it's kind of a scaled tiering of pricing.
So Nate, when you do that, because I'm interested in that too, when it's, let's say one person books on and then, you know, a month or 2 later, you have 3 more people book on, do you then have to go in on the back end and you change their package to the lower price? Okay.
Yeah. So right now, YouLi doesn't automatically do that. But if I've got 3 people, it wouldn't be 5,000 for each of them. They'd all come down to 4,200 or whatever the price is.
Oh, that's
so it's a little bit of a manual workaround. The other thing that Jen and I have been talking about that I think is kind of interesting, I might just show it actually so everyone can see.
Go for it.
Is with this Kilimanjaro trip, I think I've still got it open here. So if I expressed interest, what it'll actually do, I'll just walk you through it so you can all see.
Just make sure to make a unique email address.
Good thinking. So if I choose a number of people, say I've got 3 people in my trip. And then I express interest. Oops, sorry. Then I express interest. One of the interesting things is that when you do that, sorry, my internet's going a little slow. When you do that, the next thing you see is actually a rather large number. And what Jen and I were talking about is having this show a per person price rather than the total of the invoice. Because what YouLi does at the moment is it's actually applied dollars each. That's why you're getting 32,000. And then what someone has to actually come and do in their package is say, I've only got 3, so I should be on the 2 to 4 package, and that will change it. So ideally, we'll be able to get to a place where at least this big number here doesn't freak people out. Because for me, if I'm booking a tour and I think it's $4,000 each and I've got 3 of us and I'm expecting 12 grand, it shows me 32, I'm going, well, this is crap, I'm leaving. I probably wouldn't even scroll down through this to figure out what's going on. So that's just one thing to be aware of at the moment. I don't think it's a major issue, just something that I'm talking to YouLi about. And then also having them select the package that's actually right for them. Ideally, if they pick 3 people, YouLi would just pick the package that's right for them.
Yeah, and that's based on Nate's feedback, we need to shift that default. So by default, when you register, it puts you on the cheapest package, which made sense at the time when we built it. But now that we're sort of seeing how it's being used, actually it needs to be the cheapest package for the number of people you've just registered for. So rather than, you know, so if you said 3, then it should put you on the 2 to 4 package because that's the cheapest one for 3 people. So yeah, and that's been really good feedback from Nate in terms of using that. And is that a group departure or is that a private departure?
It's a group departure.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is as you get more and more people onto that, are you going to put people onto different, like, are you going to adjust the pricing overall? So like, let's say you booked in as a solo person and you agreed to 5,000, but then you get another 8 people on the trip. You're actually going to drop them down to only owing 3,000-ish, something like that. Yeah.
So I'll do that in the back end by applying a credit, and the credit will just say discount because it's now out to 8 people on the trip or something like that. And the reason we do that is obviously you signed on for 1 and you were happy with 5, but I don't really want 8 people turning up on Kilimanjaro and one saying, I paid 3, I paid 4, I paid 5, and then you've got a headache.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's definitely a way to manage it. Another thing to note is that you can also change the price on the package itself. So you could basically, once you hit the numbers, you can actually change the package for one and you can make it the same price for all 3 of them. And then you can just hide all of them except for the one that you want sort of publicly available, so they don't have 3 of the same price. But that's an option. Like, so you can apply in a credit like Nate is doing, and then they can actually see how that's changed. So that might actually be a good way to do it, Nate, because then they go, yeah, I committed to 5, and oh, now I'm only paying 3, and here's my credit. But you can also just change the base price, and then it will just change their invoice. So it just depends on the user experience that you think makes sense for that customer, whether or not you want to leave the base price as the one they committed to and apply a credit, or just change the original base price on the package. And that will flow through when you change those package prices.
I think now you mention it, Jen, what I would do is show the credit for the people already signed on, but then hide those packages. So that now we've got 4 people, we've just got these packages available.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just change the name of them or something like that.
And so for those of you who don't know, you can hide packages from your travelers, but they're still visible to you on the back end. So you can still move people around and people can be on those packages, but they're no longer something that the public can choose when they register onto a trip. So that's probably one of the best ways to kind of do what we're talking about here, which is that you put out your package. Maybe when you start, the only package that's available is the higher priced one, because if you're the only one who books in, you're paying $5,000. But then as you start to get closer to your numbers, you could actually put the lower price options out there because you've hit your minimums, and so now you're making those visible. So you could have your template have all of the options, but maybe hidden by default, and then you only show the lower price ones as you hit your minimums. So
yeah.
So that's definitely one way to do it, but recognizing, YouLi doesn't currently have a sort of a minimum feature that gets enforced. So you do have to sort of work out how your business wants to enforce a minimum concept, whether or not, as Nate's doing, if you want to go, it's going to be $5,000. Kind of thing. And you might get people to kind of opt into that. Or I think what Kim, you're saying you do is you just, you sort of don't take on singles. You only take on couples if there's nobody else booked onto the trip, right?
I think what I'm realizing as we're sitting here is before anyone's booked onto a trip, if I set the minimum to 2, so no single can book on by themselves if nobody else is on. And then once there's anybody booked on that trip, I can just take out that minimum. So then any single person could start booking onto that trip.
Absolutely. Yes. Hey, we've just solved your problem.
The only challenge with that, Kim, is what if you've got 5 singles that are interested before you get a double? It effectively means you might lose 5 customers.
Yeah, I know. This would also template and redoing all my cards. So we'll see.
True.
I think we're okay taking singles and just hoping that people book on, but yeah.
Sam, going back to your question, one of the things we've done before, if we've had, 2 fewer people book on a trip, particularly something for Kilimanjaro, is just explain to them what that means. So if there's only one person on Kilimanjaro, not only are you paying a higher fee to do it, but you actually have a lot higher tips because tipping isn't included in your price. So if you've got one person doing Kilimanjaro, you've probably got a crew of about 10 people. Whereas if you've got 2 people doing Kilimanjaro, you've probably got a crew of 12 people. So you can see your tips haven't really gone up, but now you've divided them by 2. So when you say, oh, this will be an extra $500 in tips or something, that's normally a good incentive for them to move to another trip where there's another person.
Got it. That's a good insight.
I don't know if your trips work the same.
No, they're a bit different.
Yeah. All right. I did want to just touch on one other thing. Kim mentioned, that sometimes if she gets the trip kind of sold out and then she has to launch another trip, right? So if your September 12th date is full, so you launch another September 12th date. So one thing about YouLi that's really great is that you can actually make the one that's full into a private trip. Excuse me. And then everybody who's on that trip can still see it. They use their magic links, they can still access it, but it drops off of your embed on the website, and people who click through on that public link won't see that page anymore, right? And so instead, then you make your new September 12th departure date that's empty, and you make that public and listed. And so I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw, again, the way that the sort of natural YouLi capabilities interacts with the tour series, because it's in the same tour series. When you add that new September 12th date, it basically just shows up in the drop-down box as September 12th. Your customers have no idea that's a different departure than it was before, and you can manage that full trip privately and then start taking bookings on the new public listed version of September 12th departure. All right. Well, one other thing I just wanted to show quickly for people who are sort of relatively new to YouLi might be that everybody has this little link here.
I think for me, the main thing.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Nate.
So I was just going to say the main thing for me with tour series is if you're running the same trip multiple times a year, it just means your website doesn't have so much clutter on it. So you don't have 10 of the same thing. It's a lot easier for someone to just pick the dates they want. I think.
Oh, we seem to have lost Nate again.
The best thing about the series for me. And it's super easy to set up. All it is just doing one little extra thing on your setup where you apply it to a tour series.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that summary. So just so people kind of who might not have heard that completely. So just the contrast of, having a per departure date card where you sort of have just lots and lots and lots of cards versus being able to kind of have that sort of one card for multiple departure dates is really the core aspect of the tour series capability. And we, as discussed, we intend to kind of expand from here. But right now, if that's a need that you have, because you don't want that website clutter, as Nate described it accurately, if you want to sort of clean that up, then the tour series feature is really valuable to create that. And what you've seen today is from Nate and from Kim, kind of how they're doing that for their trips. Now, both of them happen to have Kilimanjaro treks, so it does seem like if you're doing Kilimanjaro treks, tour series is definitely for you. But I think, as we can see from Global Family Travels, who does, these are actually day tours in Seattle, any kind of same itinerary repeated on multiple days is really the right kind of sort of setup for tour series. And then it is really straightforward once you've got it installed on your account. All you have to do is pick which one it's in. And just as soon as you pick the tour series, set it public, make it listed, it'll appear like we just showed you. And just to show you quickly, everyone who has a YouLi account gets a little kind of like mini website where if you're not a plug and play customer, then it's just a kind of a preview of what your public listed trips embed would look like. And so that's what Kim was kind of showing us before. This is her version of that website. She doesn't use it. She doesn't drive traffic to here. But it's a great way to just really quickly kind of test and say, oh, well, what's this going to look like before I put it onto my website? So what you see here in these embedded cards is what's going to be embedded on your website. And you can get an idea of what that tour series kind of setup is going to look like before you go live with it on your own site. So it's a nice little testing. It's like a nice little test bed to make sure that you've done all the setup work. And I can see Kim's definitely taking advantage of that, like doing all that setup work first on YouLi. And then when she's got it right, then she's going to do that full integration like Nate has done into the trip cards on her actual website. All right, I think we have covered everything that we wanted to talk about today. So thank you, Sam, for all your excellent questions, and everyone for joining. Those of you who are watching this on Facebook, feel free to pop in questions along the way and we'll definitely respond to them. please, if you want to reach out to Nate or Kim, just go to their websites and connect with them there. They create amazing experiences, and they seem to know what they're doing. So I'm very impressed with everything. And you guys are relaunching post-pandemic. I think it's incredible. It's just wonderful to see the travel industry coming back, and it's people like you that you stuck with it, you came through on the other side. So I just want to give a little applause for that. And yeah, I look
does feel good to be selling trips again.
Right. So I just want to say it feels really good to be growing with you guys again, and we're really proud to be the software that helps you scale and have the problem of having multiple departures. So yay. Thank you guys.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.